Do you want to say our little spiel or shall I?
Oh, yeah, sure, John.
Oh, okay. Welcome, everyone. This is September 18th, and it's Rotary Peace Corps Week, Monday, 2023. So welcome, everyone, and we'll continue to add people. We have a lot of people registered, so we will just let them continue to pop in. My name is Kim Dixon, and I'm the president of Partnering for Peace. I'm in RPCV from Georgia, 2014 to 16, and I'm also Midtown Raleigh Rotary Club. I'm very delighted that you all here share the passion and of the possibilities that we have between the Rotary and the Peace Corps communities to work together. There's just so much we can do. As you probably know, Partnering for Peace is based on a formal memorandum of understanding between Rotary and Peace Corps that was signed originally in 2015. We have about 161 members right now, and we have about 4 times that in our social media people following us. So we're very proud of that. Our job at Partnering for Peace is to support the memorandum between with awareness, education, and outreach. So we have a simple job, but also keeps us really busy. Today, we're going to kick off our Rotary Peace Corps Week, and I'm honored to have 2 fabulous people here. Dr. Jody Olsen, who is former director of Peace Corps. Thanks so much, Jody. You've been so supportive of Partnering for Peace. And Vice President Pat Merriweather, who's been reaching out to Peace Corps people from the Rotary side for years, even before she probably knew there was a partnership. I think you reached out to me in 2015, I think, so a long time ago. Our club, our organization was founded by a group of passionate people, and Steve Werner is one of the founders of Partnering for Peace and our first president. So he's the George Washington, if you will, of Partnering for Peace. I'm going to just briefly share the schedule for the week, and then we will pop into our program. Let's see. I'm just pulling up our website. So if you haven't joined yet, here you go. You can join for free at partneringforpeace.org. And here are some easy ways to partner on the right-hand side of our website, some tools to promote the partnership, resources, even our YouTube channel, which has a lot of great videos on it. But this week we've got, as I mentioned already, today's program, which is going to be fabulous. Tuesday, we're going to talk about how districts and Rotary clubs and districts are reaching out and connecting with RPCVs and now PCBs around the world. On Wednesday, we're going to go on the Peace Corps side and see how the country directors in the actual countries, I think we're in Peace Corps now in over 60, I think, and how they're reaching out and Rotary clubs are connecting with them to support one another in service projects in the countries, as well as RPCVs, of course, that continue to support their countries of service. And as I mentioned, I'm on my way back to Georgia, my country of service, next week, and I'm so excited to continue reviewing projects and celebrating with people. Thursday is probably the most popular session that we had last year, which is a deep dive into 3 projects this year that we chose on how they got started, joint projects, how they got started, how they Peace Corps community and Rotary community supported one another in it, and what the benefits were. And then Friday will be my session, which is really highlighting how Rotary and RPCVs have continued their service in the area of peace. And we have the co-founders of the Action Group for Peace. We have the Aaron Thomas as an RPCV who co-founded along with Al Jubik. We have Barbara Muller, who someone's already mentioned, who's been so incredible as a chair of the E-Club of World Peace. And finally, we have Mike Caruso, who has was RPCV and founder of the Peace Builder Clubs, and he's got over 500 around the world now. So really amazing, amazing group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, the most important person for Rotary Peace Corps Week, which is our coordinator. So I want to thank Fred Cowan, who is an RPCV from Ethiopia. And he continued his service when he came home in the state of Kentucky as a lawyer, a member of the Kentucky House of Representatives, and he was also Attorney General for Kentucky. Later, he became a circuit court judge. So one of the few people in Kentucky that was elected to all three branches of the Kentucky state government, which is really rare. They must like you there. Right? Now he's learning to herd volunteer cats as the vice president of Partnering for Peace. And I dare say this is a really important skill. So thank you, Fred, for stepping up and for all the support of coordinating the entire week. And I'll turn the program over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate the introduction. And, political jobs may, to some degree, be like some nonprofit jobs where nobody else will do it. So you step forward and they say, okay, you're the one. But in any event, I'm been pleased to continue my career of service, which started years and years ago in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia, not to give my age away, but somebody listed their years of service. So my years of service were 67 to 69, which seems like ancient history. I was going to give a brief introduction of the rest of the week, but Kim has already covered that, so I don't need that. But let me just say, I can personally attest to the deep sense of satisfaction that I get from helping to bring together Rotary and the Peace Corps, which are two of the greatest human service organizations in the world when you think about it. And that's critical to what we're trying to do this week, is promote that and educate ourselves and figure out more ways to work together. And I think by registering today, you who are in on this call are involved with that effort as well, and are concerned about ways of providing service as part of the usual part of our lives. We want to inspire you this week to get even more actively involved with the efforts of Rotary and the Peace Corps, building on your past experience in the spirit of public service, peace, and goodwill that brought you to either or both of these great organizations in the first place. By participating this week, you are part of a growing venture that can make a real difference in people's lives, as well as your life, to help all of them fully participate in the human story. Leading off today, as we've indicated, are two outstanding individuals with deep knowledge and experience of the Peace Corps Rotary connection. I'll introduce them in just a moment. I would remind you that as far as the sessions this week, check to make sure you get it in the right time. If you miss it, the sessions are being recorded and you can go back and listen later. But of course, we want you to participate. And as part of each panel, we will have the opportunity to engage in a Q&A. We're decided the best for efficiency's sake is to try to do that through the chat room. So if you have some questions of any of the panelists or anything else, please put them in the chat, and then we can talk about it. It's going to be an exciting week, revealing great opportunities for you to enhance your Rotary and Peace Corps connections, and thus build hope, which is Rotary's theme for this year. Finally, remind you that all the sessions are recorded. Now, for the main course of the day, I have the privilege of introducing our two outstanding keynote speakers. Jody Olsen, as Kim mentioned, former director of the United States Peace Corps, and Pat Merriweather-Argis, the current vice president of Rotary International. As you can tell from the resumes and presentations, we're indeed lucky to have truly two great, truly distinguished individuals to kick off this great week. So let me tell you about Jody Olsen and then about Pat, and then I will turn it over to them. Dr. Jody Olsen was the 20th director of the United States Peace Corps from 2018 to 2021. When the COVID pandemic struck, she was faced with the toughest decision imaginable, whether to withdraw and evacuate all 7,000 PCVs from 61 countries and bring them home safely. She understood what that meant, and I hope I'm correct in this. There was some discussion beforehand, Jody. She had been a PCV in Tunisia from 1966 to 68. She did make the decision to bring the PCVs home, and in hindsight, that was a decision that was necessary and appropriate. She had also previously served the agency in 5 other senior positions, so you can tell what kind of knowledge she has of the Peace Corps. Prior to returning to the Peace Corps, Dr. Olsen had a long and distinguished career in academia and affiliated groups, including the University of Maryland Baltimore School of Social Work and the organization overseeing the Fulbright Senior Scholar Program. She has a PhD from the University of Maryland, has been a resident fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School, and has received 2 honorary doctorates. If I even got one of those, I'd be delighted, Jody, so congratulations. Pat Merriweather-Argis is the current vice president of Rotary International, which, as you all know, involved Rotary. That is a pretty big deal. She joined Rotary in 2002 and has been an active member of the Napier, Illinois club. She has deep involvement in Rotary, including serving on Rotary's COVID-19 task force as a regional Rotary Foundation coordinator, chair of the 2018 Presidential Peace Conference in Chicago, a board member of the Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene Rotary Action Group, and also been involved in more than 20 Rotary Foundation grants focused on healthcare, water, sanitation, and hygiene. In Rotary, Pat has received the Service Above Self Award, the Avenues of Service Award, and is a benefactor and major donor, all in addition to being a Paul Harris Fellow. Now, there's a real Rotarian for you. All this doesn't get into Pat's career of working in numerous capacities in the healthcare field, helping to improve the health of Americans, including by serving on the boards of 2 nonprofit hospitals in Chicago and as the executive director of a company focused on improving Medicare delivery. So with that, let me turn the session over to Jody for her comments. So, and then after Jody, we'll go directly to Pat, and then after that, a Q&A. But as you have thoughts, go ahead and put them in the chat at this time. So Jody, floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Fred. And I am honored to be here. First, just to pick up on one of your comments, that March 2020 was the most difficult decision I had made in my life. And I've made a lot of decisions. But for me, it was so difficult because, as you noted, Fred, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 60s and have served the agency one way or another in every decade since. And as my family has said to me, as well as friends, Peace Corps is in my soul. My soul is Peace Corps. And so having to do that, I felt I was letting down President Kennedy, Sarge Shriver, and all the leaders and all the volunteers that had served over 60 years. So I want to do a quick shout out to Carol Spahn, who has done a yeoman leadership effort, as well as everyone, in getting now over 2,000 volunteers in 60 countries. I feel much better, but I love Peace Corps, and I really also love Rotary. Why? I joined the first conference, and through most of my time at Peace Corps, particularly the last 10 years as deputy director and director, I have worked with Rotary. And I have to say, this all started at least 25 years ago when Steve Warner, the first president, and I met each other in Denver, Colorado, and we have been on this partnership journey for at least 25 years. Thank you, Steve. And my virtual hat is off to you for your decades of long commitment to partnering for peace. Now, as I prepared for my remarks, I asked Ted Adams, the Peace Corps Rotary guru that I've worked with for several years, why Rotary and Peace Corps have been longtime friends and colleagues. He said, Rotary and Peace Corps have almost the same DNA. And we do. And that's what you alluded to, Fred. Rotary's international mission is to provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. It's phenomenal. And as I read it, I appreciated it is so close to that of Peace Corps' mission and 3 goals, which is to promote world peace and friendship by helping countries meet their need for trained people, promoting a better understanding of Americans by those served, and promoting a better understanding that Americans will have of peoples from around the world. Both our organizations, we emphasize service, world understanding, and peace through building community leaders in the US and throughout the globe. Both our organizations work in thousands of local communities where we learn and respect differences, where we build trust in each other, although I know sometimes it's difficult, and establish equal partnerships honed over the years. Building trust takes time, maybe years, and yet making a difference, one of our critical common goals, requires that we listen to each other, we work with ideas we might not agree with, and honor each person who speaks and takes action. Our DNA tells us that a community's spoken interest in a soccer field might have more value than our perceived need to tell a community to upgrade classrooms. I've learned painfully, very painfully at times, that our own ideas are not always right. Peace Corps and Rotary, as organizations, show each other this same respect, and we mostly succeed at it in how we design projects together for those we serve. We keep reminding ourselves and each other to listen more and tell less. Sorry that I'm doing the telling at this point, but I'll do the listening. In the past 10 years, our 2 organizations have already partnered on dozens of projects on the ground in over 30 countries in literacy, water, sanitation, and health, with over 1 million Rotarians in over 45,000 clubs throughout the world. And just think, 45,000 Rotary clubs. And on the other side now, 250,000 RPCVs and 2,000 currently serving volunteers growing every day. We are perfectly postured to expand global collaboration, including in the United States. This week's conference reinforces and builds on the energy, the excitement, and the common purpose that compounds our collective lifetime impact, not achievable if we worked separately. And I want to say it again, our collective lifetime impact is not achievable if we work separately. Let me give a few examples. Peace Corps country staff and PCVs are connecting with Rotary clubs to expand in-country local projects and community networks. Rotarians talk with Peace Corps trainees during their 3 months of in-country training to encourage volunteers to ask Rotary clubs to be community resources. What's interesting is, in addition, these conversations with Peace Corps trainees can also excite Rotary service when volunteers return to the US. In-country Rotoact clubs, which are young professionals, now give direct service and training support with volunteers in their work. Many volunteer projects involve youth leadership training, and the Rotary clubs are models of this leadership success. Now, US-based Rotary clubs are contributing to their hometown in-country Peace Corps volunteer projects. Thank you so much. By raising money for projects these volunteers develop in their countries of service and then post on the Peace Corps website. 100% of all money raised goes safely and directly to these projects, which can range from classroom computers to youth HIV health training and everything in between. Over $1 million have been raised so far for such projects, upwards of 2,500 funded projects. And you can see these projects, what they mean for such small amounts of money. They're extraordinary. Thousands of RPCV Rotarians help facilitate even more connections between US Rotary clubs and Peace Corps volunteers in countries of service. They know many of the ins and outs of how to make projects happen, and they carry the passion for doing so. And that passion is right here this week. Rotary leaders are inviting Peace Corps recruiters and RPCVs here in the US to speak at club meetings at the Rotary Rotary-sponsored youth programs. I personally, and I've loved it, have spoken at Rotary Club meetings here in the DC area. And in doing so, I've learned so much more about the rich Rotary community programs here in this area, of which I can participate, while encouraging, and you know me, the club's participation in Peace Corps projects overseas. I also, as you know, encourage club members and or family members to consider being a volunteer. We are each other's best recruiters. Rotary Club leaders are reaching to local returning RPCVs to join and add their experience and passion for civic leadership in each Rotary community. Let me give a newer partnership kind of an example. The new Peace Corps Virtual Service Program, VPS, began under COVID, when we had no in-country serving volunteers. It reaches RPCVs back here in the US into service virtually through FaceTime, Zoom, or other visual connections. These participants serve for about 10 weeks, offering 15 hours a week of time, working together with host community counterparts and students and host families. Its success opens new opportunities for Rotary Club partnership projects where an RPCV is a Rotary Club member. It means contributions in communities around the world virtually. For example, in Ukraine, the country director and Peace Corps team have met with regional and local Rotarians to explore how RPCV Rotarians might participate with Ukrainian and regional Rotary Club networks virtually, focused on educating in trauma-induced environments. This is extraordinary and how necessary. And this is only the beginning of possibilities. Stay tuned. The community leaders here in the US have taken their Rotary and Peace Corps experience to build new service programs based on the missions of both organizations. Let me give you one example. After Kevin Batten was both a Rotary International and Peace Corps volunteer, he returned to the US to use the values from both these programs to establish Elevated Up and Out to empower underserved youth. Working with Rotarians, Rotoac clubs, and Peace Corps volunteers, this program provides financial support for getting passports and coordinating international community service and travel opportunities. A new NGO based on his Rotary and Peace Corps experience. You will hear on Wednesday more specific examples of partnership success and how to build new ones. Be creative with each other. We're bonded together based on our common vision of service through community, mutual respect, trust, years of long partnership. We are joined together for life. We can strengthen these ties this week by reaching out to both RPCVs and Rotarians to try new program ideas and share the experience that give anchor and strength to the next generation of service. As I noted in the beginning, and you all know me well with what I'm going to say, our DNA is based on respect, trust, and honoring each other. The village chief, the community school leader, or shelter recipients here in the US learn to trust us. We learn to trust them. This is not automatic, but it takes listening, learning, and time being together. With these relationships, each of us gains more than we give. And each of you are testimonies to that. Making a difference, one experience, one person, one cup of coffee at a time, represent the building blocks of world peace and friendship. Working as partners, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. That was wonderful. And I agree with you. We have so much together that we can share and learn from each other. And I'm going to be showing some photos up here. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Thank you. And let's see. Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the innovative initiatives that have been taking place and why it's so important and we value so much working with the Peace Fellows, the Peace Corps Fellows, because I view them as fellows, the volunteers, is because they have the rich experience of being in the field. They know what's going on. They know the culture. They understand. They can educate us as well in terms of the appreciation and some of the challenges their communities face. You know, if people are doing global grants or any types of grants or projects, and they've never traveled to a country that they're doing the project with. And that happens often, not just in COVID times, but in other times as well. And it's wonderful to have that experience and that person that knows about the community and can help us along. I think that, you know, I love the idea of us having community resources. And I also have to say my experience with Peace Corps volunteers is you could, and I always say, you can drop a Peace Corps volunteer anywhere in the world, and somehow they figure out how to make it work. And so when I was working with Medicare for the Quality Improvement Organization, working on communities, community development, as well as advancement, the Peace Corps volunteers were who I recruited because they actually can figure out things, overcome barriers, work within the community, and they have a skill set that really leads to good outcomes, as well as creating a cultural understanding and certainly representing the world in a better way. So with that, you know, some of the alignment, and I think Jody went through this, is we do have peace through service. Both of our organizations, we are very much focused on that. And working with the Peace Corps volunteers, there's knowledgeable people on the ground that have the experience and can help lead us in the right direction. We align with the Sustainable Development Goals and the 7 areas of focus. And then we also have our globally, locally, and within each other. That's our mission, is to bring peace and understanding as well as initiatives to the global setting, as well as locally and within each other. And that one is an important one as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about End Polio Now. And then some of the innovative areas are the environmental, which again, we know that climate change is a real changer for many people in many different settings, as well as mental health services and support. I can't, there's not enough mental health providers at all throughout the world. And every time I talk about this, because it is one of the goals this year, is to, reduce the stigma or eradicate the stigma, create awareness, and also to start linking to resources and support services that are out there. And that's very challenging in this time. Now, in terms of I think some of you may be familiar with the areas of focus, but this is where just about anything can fall under to the areas of focus. And then because we didn't have disaster grants or disaster response, these are more long-term type of initiatives. Rotary created a disaster grant. So now we can do work immediately in disaster areas as well. In terms of how I got acquainted, there was a peace fellow, and he spent time in Rwanda and Malawi. And his name was Paul Carpenter. He was with the Rotary Foundation. He was with Rotary International as a staff. He had been like I said, a Peace Corps volunteer. And I was new to Rotary. It was probably about 3 or 4 months into Rotary. And he came up to me and he said, Pat, could you stand and talk to Sister Florence while I do some things? And Sister Florence has a initiative called Upendo Village. It's in Kenya, right outside of, Naivasha, and about 30 miles from Nairobi. But again, as you know, it's probably about an hour and a half from Nairobi by car. So with that, I started talking to her. And before I knew it, we were providing them with HIV, AIDS rapid screening kits, as well as working with them on health and all different things. And Sister Florence, she got her education here in the United States at Loyola University in Chicago. And one of the things that she really wanted was clean water. And you can see from this mud hole that's there, that's where people were taking their animals. They were washing clothes as much as you could, as well as using it as their source of water. So we worked with them. We put in a water well, sanitation system, and also all of the services needed to support water. This is somebody that was very innovative, because then she created water bottles, not plastic, but water bottles, and delivered them to businesses and all over. And that's how she created her clinic and her HIV support programs. Now, what's interesting about Sister Florence is that was in 2022. I was a new Rotarian at that time. And to this day, every year we do a major project with her as well. So again, that was Paul Carpenter, past, Peace Corps volunteer, introducing me to somebody that became a lifelong connection for us in our club. Now, there's many opportunities we have. One of them that really is, I guess all the 7 areas of focus are so important, and we do so much challenge because everyone needs help in so many ways. But this was a water and filtration system in Dupada, India. And what was interesting about this is the women were the ones who designed the center. And I went back, this was maybe in 2009. I went back about 4 years ago. And I'll tell you, it looks the same. It's sparkling clean. The women took charge. And again, there's always people that can help guide us. Because when we were doing this bathhouse, they said, oh, no, let the women design it. So it's 2 stories high, and the windows are way at the top of the 2-story. There are no lower windows because, again, the reason they needed this is they were attacked as they went out to the fields at night, as well as to relieve themselves at any time of the day. And here it is. They created it, and that came from a Peace Corps volunteer said, let the community design it. Don't design it for them. Let them design it and let them be co-developers of this. And that's how it was created. Another issue that has come up, and this issue is around the world, is the issue of our dialysis centers and treatment. And we got into working with different people, again, a spectrum of volunteers. We had never done dialysis centers, and we put in a dialysis center, and this was very unusual. This is in a very poor community. And the reason we did the dialysis center is because the men were taking their lives by suicide. They were dying by suicide at high numbers, young people, 40s. And the reason being is because they didn't want to take the money away from their children's education. So they would die by suicide rather than take the money to take care of themselves. So again, many different ways. Now, thinking of that, when they first approached us and said, we want to stop suicide in this community, we're like, okay. And then they explained it, and it was like, oh, this is the first one. We need to talk to some people that have worked in India that can help steer us and make sure that we're doing things in the right way. I think everyone knows the situation in Ukraine, and I know we're all about peace. The Peace Corps volunteers, Rotary, and it is heartbreaking what has gone on in Ukraine. And I know that with the disaster grants we have now, and that's something also to consider, is not just the long-term global grants, the disaster grants, we can do rapid response, but we've never been in disaster situations, most of us. So it's very helpful to have that type of support and guidance that can lead us to make sure that we're delivering what is needed. And the needs after a disaster are so tremendous, but it's how do we best apply ourselves and give them the support they need. Some of this came in the way of medical. This was one, it actually ended up being written up in the New York Times without any mention of Rotary, any mention of the name of the hospital. But this was one of the first hospitals that started doing craniotomies in the basement of the hospital. And again, talking to people, talking to Peace Corps volunteers, they say, hey, people work in some of the worst conditions that you can imagine in healthcare so that people can thrive and survive. The schooling systems, we know there's a lot that needs to be done. This is, and I know we're looking for partners on this. This is not a short-term initiative. It's going to be a long-term initiative because of the mental health of the children as well as the adults, what they have gone through. But this is a Rotarian that was a former Peace Corps volunteer that has been working in Lviv in the educational system, helping the schools set up some learning and opportunities for education for the children. Now, we talk about war, but I'm in Chicago, and we do have a war in Chicago with the violence that is occurring. And so I know we're always looking for opportunities from volunteers, from Peace Corps volunteers to help us out, to help sort out some of the issues going on. We know, the historic issues in terms of the segregation, the violence, the inequities, all of that. But how do we move forward as a city and as a community? I serve as the hospital chair of a safety net hospital in Englewood. Englewood is one of the most violent communities in Chicago. And yet the people that live there have lived there, many of them, for most of their lives. And so to sell their homes or that, they would get nothing in return. So people stay. There's the majority of people are not involved in gangs, but it is the ones that are involved in gangs. So again, any help, we'll take it, because we know there's many things that can be changed, and the opportunities are endless in Chicago. I was in Pakistan, and again, I know Pakistan is a very challenging community. I was there in May of 2023. And what I loved about this, and again, this is Rotarians, and this is a great story. This is in the Sindh area. The Sindh area, as you know, was about a year ago when it flooded. 1/3 of the entire community, the entire state of Sindh got wiped out through the flooding. So the Rotarians are building these huts. And what was so special about this site, it was the first one. It's 100 huts. They have community cookings. They have clean water running. They have educational programs, and they have kiosks and services for healthcare. But this was the Islamic Rotarians did this for the persons from India that had migrated. Had migrated recently to Pakistan, and it's Hindus. They're all Hindu. So they set up a temple for them to worship. They built a temple for them. And it's such an amazing relationship. So I know sometimes we do hear about the challenges between India and Pakistan, but as many have told me, they have family in both sides of the, in both sides of the countries. And but they also have a huge respect for the Hindu religion and the Indians as well. So again, that's peace at work. One area that we have found a great deal of interest is in children being educated and sometimes not being able to go to school. This is in Guatemala. Honduras. It's a autism center. And then this is in Slovakia. The one in Honduras was the first autism center. This is the first autism center in Slovakia as well. And then even there's autism, it's called Hope Village, and they have a Rotary Club of all people along the autism spectrum. And you can see even in Chicago, there's the need for people to come together to understand their children's condition. And this is on the southwest side of Chicago, where there was no schools or services for autism children. And then the substance use disorders are something that, again, there's the mental health conditions, there's acute mental health, there's long-term care, long-term mental health. And then we have what's actually killing many people in the United States is the opioid crisis, with the number of deaths that have occurred, and 100,000 in 2022. Now, I showed you that graph, the time thing on Chicago and the number, the shot clock. In Chicago, there were 2,000 deaths by opioid overdoses. And of those 2,000, that is less than the number of, it's more than the deaths of all the people that have died by homicide in Chicago during that year, and accidents as well. So this is a crisis. It's no longer hidden. We need to be talking about it. We need help. And when I was in the UK this past week, they also were talking about the crises, and certainly in Central and South America as well. And then our Rotary. Rotary, I think you know, is very much focused on ending polio. Now, sometimes you'll hear we're down to 7 cases right now from the calendar year, January 1st. 7 cases, but 5 in Afghanistan and 2 in Pakistan. But we have 240 cases of polio-derived, vaccine-derived polio. So when we talk about it, we need to talk about these outbreaks that are occurring. They occur because of lack of clean water, a lack of vaccination, opportunities to seek care if somebody is sick, so that again they can control an outbreak. But we have 240 cases, so we're not near ending polio until every child is free from polio. And that does take a lot of work and effort and conversations with local authorities and governments. And it is, it is working. We're down from the number we had last year, but I don't want to think that anyone to think that we're done when the 7 cases of polio go down to 0. We still have to get rid of the circulating virus. And by the way, of those 246 that I mentioned, those are all the cases in which the child was paralyzed. So, and it's not from the vaccine. It's from it can be the child relieves themselves in dirty water or in a stream, and then somebody else picks that up as well. So again, this is a huge, huge issue for Rotary, is the fight against polio. I'm amazed at all of the countries that have come together. And we know that women in Afghanistan could no longer work. But quite honestly, they are working to eradicate polio. So again, and the number of women that have died in Pakistan, and I met the healthcare workers, the frontline healthcare workers, and what they said is they are doing it because they care for the children. They want the children to survive. And there's been about 100 healthcare workers that have been killed administering the polio vaccine. So we have so many opportunities, not only with the returning Peace Corps volunteers, but the ones that are on the ground, to work together to identify where they're at and to reach them, so that, again, we can have better programs, better outcomes from our grants, and also work to support them as well with the needs they see in the community. And with that, again, thank you for listening. And I'm very excited to be on this program and requesting help all the time from all of our knowledgeable Peace Corps volunteers. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pat. Thank you very much, Jody, for those very informative and stimulating thoughts that you brought to us. And we can see in your all's presentations the breadth and depth of what this is all about. So we want to thank you for that. I want to, at this time, turn the podium over to, kind of hard to talk about a podium when it's all virtual, but you know what I mean. Turn the podium over to Steve Werner. I think her opening remarks, Kim talked a little bit about Steve, and I think others have, and Jody did as well. But I want to give you his background, because Steve is a crucial part of Partnering for Peace. There's no question about that. He is an international development consultant now. He spent 25 years working with large NGOs such as CARE, Habitat for Humanity, Water for the People, and the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. His major focus now is capacity building, program development and evaluation, fundraising, planning, and board development. He's an RPCV who has served in Korea and more recently in Georgia. So some of you who maybe spent a number of years ago in the Peace Corps, you have Steve as a good role model for coming back a few years later and doing it all over again. He is currently a member of the Rotary Club of Denver Southeast. He continues to work at the district and international levels as a water and sanitation specialist. He's a past board chair of the National Peace Corps Association. And significantly, he and other Denver area Rotarians, as you heard, helped establish the formal relationship between Rotary International and the United States Peace Corps. He's the founding president of Partnering for Peace. and he remains a prime mover in the organization. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Fred. And can everybody hear me? Because I'm having a few little computer challenges today. The first question is from Kate Van Slick. And Kate, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Can you put in the chat window your Rotary and/or Peace Corps connection as well? But Kate's question is, are disaster grants awarded to Rotary International, or can a local Rotary group apply? Can we create a partnership with other Rotary groups in countries such as Morocco to meet needs on the ground? Also, Peace Corps is in Morocco. And so I think this will be more directed to you, Pat, but Jody, perhaps when Pat's done answering that, you can talk about how Peace Corps volunteers might help during any situation, whether it's a disaster grant or a development project. So Pat, could you answer that question, please?
Sure. Disaster grants are available to natural disasters that occur, as well as we saw in Ukraine, man-made disasters as well. But for disaster grants, the way they work is the districts within the disaster area can request grants. So they can request grants. And Rotary typically starts out with $25,000 grants, but if the need can be demonstrated by the district, they can appeal, and sometimes they've gone up to $50,000 or $100,000. And the nice thing about the disaster grants is they are quick. Typically within 2 days, they're awarded and the money is on its way. It's a very quick process. People understand they're under a great deal of pressure. They trust the Rotarians, the district governors to approach that. And so it is typically through the district governors. For Ukraine, it was a little bit different because with Ukraine, many people were housing people migrating from Ukraine. Sometimes the supplies, we could get hands on medical supplies, tourniquets that weren't available in other countries. They may be available in the United States, and we were able to turn that around and get them flown over. We had many Rotarians that took the planes to Poland and then would get the supplies and equipment into Ukraine. So that was a little bit different. But typically the route is that the district governors in or around the disaster area request the funds. And like I said, it's immediate. Sometimes they forget those funds are there, or they may not be, in a position to request them. Rotary works in different ways to make sure that they have the funds they need to help those in need during the disaster. So it's what I like about this program is there is some flexibility built in. There is still accountability, but we also know in wartime, in disaster time, it's there's some room for more flexibility than as a global grant. And yes, Morocco is, they can request the funds. And I don't know at this point if they have, but they certainly can request funds. Yes.
Let me come in with a quick addition to, I'm just really impressed with this disaster program that you've described and the quickness of these funds and how they can be used. So again, my virtual hat is off to you also. Through Ted Adams at Peace Corps, because he's the link, as you talk about, and Ted probably knows already, but to let him know that this kind of a program is available. And I think particularly about Morocco, and it could be in other places also. But then Ted has a chance to get in touch with the Peace Corps country director, in this case, Morocco, who can then note to the Peace Corps volunteers that are working on the disaster issues related to the earthquake to make them aware that this possibility is available. And this can all happen very quickly. I mean, everybody's texting and doing the instant stuff. And so that would give an opportunity to get the information out and for Peace Corps and volunteers in their projects to get news back and to get possibilities and get requests back. But work with Ted, and Ted will work with the country director to see if this could be put together. And, you know, if it works out, it can happen really fast.
It does, and that's been, certainly Ukraine was an example. It was, I think we got about $17 million within a couple of months, and then for Pakistan, we also were able to aid them. Turkey and Syria with the earthquake, another 2 million or so for them quickly. I mean, it is that type of thing. So I will make sure that we have a connection with Ted Adams. And thank you, Jody.
Camelia Freeland Taylor asked about how to connect with the large number of RPCVs in the Washington, D.C. area. And I think some of the same advice that both of you just provided would hold truth in responding to her question. But that was something that a lot of people ask, is how can a Rotarian make contact with either an RPCV group or the Peace Corps office, and vice versa? How can volunteers in country or RPCV groups make contact with Rotarians? So could you both kind of share your perspective on how to make that connection and make that approach?
I could begin, and let's talk about the United States first, because, you know, like with Rotary, the US, we have RPCV groups all over the country, and they're friends of groups, but they're also local groups. And so to be in touch with the local RPCV group, the Rotarian clubs, then the RPCV group can put out in the regular communication that they do about the opportunities with the clubs and some of what the clubs in terms of expanding membership and the kinds of programs and projects that are being done. At the national level, there's the National Peace Corps Association, and I don't want to speak for Dan, but I might. Hey, hi Dan. That, they can put out to all the affiliate groups, particularly the regional affiliate groups, about opportunities to do more work through the Rotary clubs in the U.S. to put that out, to get that together, and to the extent that, let's say it's region by region, and for example, to go to RPCVW, which is the one for Washington, D.C., to indicate these are 5 Rotary groups, these are 5 Rotary clubs, this is when they meet, this is where they meet. That makes it very specific for RPCVs to say, oh, I really wanted to do this, but I didn't know how to go about it. That's a way to make it happen.
And I think having those connections, knowing that there's different groups of in the area. I just was at a few hours ago, Chicago had its annual Peace Day, the UN Peace Day celebration. And of course, we had people from the Peace Corps Volunteers, the association there too, and they've been actively involved and engaged. But it would be helpful not only knowing the Peace Corps volunteers, but even some of the locations that they've worked in, because sometimes that's extremely helpful for, like I said, there's, I'm in a club where it's a requirement to visit the site before we do a grant, but there's many clubs that do, are requested to work on a grant, and they may have never seen the site. It's a cultural learning experience, and that's something that could be very valuable as well. And reaching out to the Washington group, I think that would be ideal, because we do know that there are many people there that would be very helpful for us as well. And again, and we'd love to have more Peace Corps volunteers, returning Peace Corps volunteers, and future Peace Corps volunteers.
let me just pick up because on what you just said, Patricia, that in the chat, that as on the Rotary list, I mean, you list what the local Rotary, how you can contact local Rotary. As local Rotaries can list particular projects they're interested in or parts of the world that they're working with, that will be a draw to RPCVs from the countries, because you asked about from specific countries or regions. And, you know, and I would see a club saying that they're really focused on the West African 5 countries. Well, I can just think of a lot of RPCVs that will say, yes, yes, yes. How can I help? How can I be there? How can I join the Rotary group? So you see what's being put in the chat. And I think this would be terrific. What you're also suggesting here is having a Peace Corps and RPCV come and talk to the local group. Well, RPCVs would love to do that. Well, most of them would love to do it. Yeah, let's assume they all would be. But as the specifics are put out on your websites and on the club websites, RPCVs will come forward, particularly if they see it through their RPCV local groups. It's that temptation. It's knowing what the ask is. They'll be right there.
Thank you. Thank you. And we don't ask much, you know, but we like to hook people in because, again, I think that cultural experience and what you said about building trust when you're working on a grant with people you have never physically met, and as somebody knowing the culture and being able to explain things, oftentimes language can be a barrier. And so it's very helpful to have that interpretation.
You know, that is really important, very exciting.
Thank you, Pat and Jody, for answering those questions. And before we take our next question, I just want to remind everybody that there's a lot of rich information in the chat window. We will be saving the chat dialogue so we can share that with everybody. And the recording will also be on the Partnering for Peace website, so that we're going to record all the sessions this week. One of the other questions that was just made by May, and May, I'm sorry, I can't see your last name right away, but May is asking about how to reach out to local RPCVs in the Minneapolis area because their club is starting oh, excuse me, that wasn't May's question. I'm sorry. That was, sorry, I think that was, sorry, Meg's question about how to connect with RPCVs in the Minneapolis area because they're starting a peace project. So it's similar to what was just described by both Pat and Jody about how to make contact, but that's part of the role of Partnering for Peace. We can help you make those connections with a local Rotary club if you're an RPCV group, and we can help you connect with the RPCV group if you're a Rotary club. But again, I think what I see keeps people from making these connections is they're not sure what to say or how to enter into an initial discussion. So Pat and Jody, could you just give your thoughts about how you think Rotary Club would be receptive to an approach by an RPCV group and vice versa?
Pat, do you want to begin?
Sure. I think anyone that's familiar with the Peace Corps would welcome their opportunity to present as well as to join in. I certainly have big bias towards the Peace Corps volunteers because my experience has been they are remarkable. When they're given a goal or they set a goal, they achieve it. They work through many issues. They're flexible, adaptable, culturally sensitive, and understanding, and have the ability to bring people together, to work together. So I certainly, would support that. And I think part of it is we could be messaging out there are a number of returning Peace Corps volunteers in the communities, and we should be tapping into them and inviting them in. Sometimes we get so busy with our own initiatives, we forget to open the doors to others, and this would be a great opportunity as well.
Picking up on just exactly what you said, Pat, and Steve, as you know, through the partnership program, I would suggest, and again, I'm kind of making this up, well, based on experience, but on the Rotary website, to be able to outline a little bit about what you said, Pat, to say the local clubs, and local clubs can put this on their website. We're looking for, or we would love to have an RPCV speaker, or we're developing a program in these 5 countries. We would love to have an RPCV come and be part of the club and help us put this together. That helps gives the words that make it easier for an RPCV to say, wow, you know, I really wanted to do this, or here's a chance to talk. And on that website, you can also say, you know, particularly for RPCVs that we're looking to help join us, these are a few of the local projects that we're working on. These are the ways we're providing service in the city or in the community. We would love to have you bring your international work to help us in this club do the work here in the city. So it's outlining 2 or 3 very specific kinds of asks that makes it easy for an RPCV to say, oh, I know what to say when I lift the phone. Who lifts the phone? When I text you, because I can say, this is what I can do, and then join and become more active. Now, with that, again, I come back to, you know, how you can put this even on the website at a national level for local groups. And NPCA can do the same thing, and the third goal at Peace Corps can do the same thing of, these are the ways you can make contributions and be specific enough that gives the aha moment to the RPCV.
That's very doable. And I have to say that the number of grants that are done each year are tremendous, and so we could certainly benefit by that knowledge and skill set.
Well, and I think, Pat, sorry, Steve, we seem to be now talking together.
No, that's great.
But in that advertisement, if I might use it, to indicate, and Peace Corps, you know, the joint conversations could be helpful. We have helped fund X number of Peace Corps partnership projects. We have helped fund X number of something or others, or we have done X number of projects together in different countries. That also gives a real specificity to why an RPCV wants to connect, because it's a way that the RPCV can continue his or her third goal going forward.
That sounds great. Yes, I think being more specific and giving them that a hook or flavor of what we have to offer. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pat and Jody. And before I turn this back to Fred, I want to acknowledge Carrie Golden, who is the Rotary liaison for the partnership between Peace Corps and Rotary, and provides a lot of great support. She works closely with Partnering for Peace. She's put a lot of resource sites into the chat window, so I hope everybody will scroll through the chat window, and we'll make that available later. I also want to acknowledge Ted Adams, who's the counterpart to Carrie for the Peace Corps. And Ted likewise is the liaison for the partnership from the Peace Corps side. And Ted and Carrie talk very frequently about how to strengthen the partnership. They reach out to Partnering for Peace. We have regular calls with Partnering for Peace. So a lot of the questions you have in the chat window, we can answer. And between Carrie, Ted, and I, we can, and not me, I mean Partnering for Peace, can help connect you to Peace Corps offices or RPCV groups or Rotary clubs. And so please do browse through the chat window. I want to thank Ted and Carrie for being with us today, but also we have an outreach committee through Partnering for Peace, and the co-chairs are Alan Kozonsky, sorry, Alan, butchering your last name, and Ellen Young. They co-chair the outreach committee, and their job is to help do a lot of the things that you're asking about today, help connect you to Rotary districts, and likewise to Peace Corps offices and Peace Corps volunteers and RPCV groups. So please use Partnering for Peace as a resource. With that,
can I just do one quick thing here?
Yeah, please, Joey.
Kathleen just put something in the chat from NPCA. She's your link with NPCA.
Yes.
And she is fabulous. And she will help you identify the country of service, but also the regional groups all over the country. And she will put out the advertisements. I hate to use that word. Let's just say the gifts of exchange opportunities to these affiliate groups. That is her full-time job. And she's so easy and fun to work with.
Thank you, Jody. And I didn't mean to slight you, Kathleen, because I'm a past board member of NPCA. That's the third leg of the stool that helps make this partnership really successful. And later in the week, and I'm going to turn this back to Fred so he can explain, you're going to hear more examples of how the success stories of how these partnerships have been really successful because of the involvement of Rotarians, or if it was a Rotary project, the involvement of Peace Corps volunteers. So Fred, I'll turn it back to you to wrap up. And Pat and Jody, thank you again for being with us today. Your comments were terrific.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Great
us.
to meet you, Pat.
Nice to meet you, Jody. Thank you. And thank
Thank
you for your
you.
service.
Well, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Steve. Special thanks to Pat and to Jody for sharing their valuable time with us and their valuable insights. And I think it's a good example of this chat session we've had in discussion of the very purpose of bringing these two great organizations together, because we've got a number of ideas flowing back and forth and a number of people actually who see the benefit of working together. We can build something together that will enhance both of our organizations. So it's just great that we've been able to do this thus far, but it's not over at all. We have 4 more sessions coming up, and we hope each of you can make it back tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. I want to remind you that you do need to register for each session in order to get make sure you get the Zoom link. And remember, it's free, however, so you're not, unlike most registrations, it doesn't cost you a thing. So we're very excited to have everybody participate tonight, and there's a lot going on and a lot more than go on, and we can build this organization that Steve and others have started to build, and it's going all in the right direction. And of course, the need is never going away. So once again, thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Bye-bye.